The season is over for the Steelers, but the drama is far from being done. Multiple reports say Antonio Brown threw a football at Ben Roethlisberger during practice last Wednesday and then decided not to practice the rest of the week. AB showed up at the stadium on Sunday, but was declared inactive and left at halftime. A Steelers player called the situation with AB, quote, embarrassing and the worst he's ever seen. So, Rob, is Antonio Brown the biggest problem in Pittsburgh?
Not by a long stretch. I mean, they got a lot of issues, the Steelers do, with the culture and with a lot of players and just the whole thing that's going on there. I will give Antonio Brown some credit that in, arguing with Ben Roethlisberger, he was imitating the quarterback, so he threw the football down at his feet. So he was just basically telling Ben what he wasn't doing right. But no, I mean, obviously his behavior and what went on is not something you want, especially when you're facing a game, the last game of the season, where at that point they didn't know if they were going to make the playoffs. So to be without your best receiver is just not a good thing, skipping practice and then, realizing, thinking you're coming to the stadium and you're going to play and they're telling you you're not going to play and then you walk out. So that's not it. But this is like a culture thing. They have had so many distractions, and every year everybody counts on the Steelers. Oh, look, on paper, they're so talented. They're going to make a run to the Super Bowl, this, that, and the other thing. All they have been for the last decade is underachievers. People act like they just won a Super Bowl last week. They haven't won a Super Bowl since 2008. Right. This is 2019. 10 full seasons have come and gone, and they haven't done anything with the roster filled with all kinds of players. Antonio Brown's been there since 10. Le'Veon Bell came in 13. And, thinking that you have those two guys and that kind of offense with some of the defensive players they've had as well, and yet nothing has worked there. So do I believe that this is just an AB problem? No, I don't believe it's an AB problem. And here's the other problem with Mike Tomlin, the coach. You wonder,
is he the problem?
He's part of the problem because of the culture in the locker room. But here's the other problem. It's hard to get rid of a coach. First of all, the Steelers don't get rid of coaches. They've had 3 coaches since 1969. Right. So that's not what they do. They just weather the storm and they stick with the script and they just figure it'll work itself out. But here's the other problem. You can't fire a coach that has never had a losing season. And he won a Super Bowl and he went to another one. Do you know, how do you get rid of that coach?
I mean, you could. I would not fire him.
But it's harder to do that.
It all depends on your expectations. I wouldn't fire him. But it all depends on what your expectations are. And to your point, nobody can deny that they've underachieved recently under Mike Tomlin. And you got Terry Bradshaw, the Steelers great, and James Harrison, the former Steeler who played for Tomlin, calling him out for a lack of discipline.
And Terry Bradshaw has been as tough on him as anybody. Right. Calls him a cheerleader that he's not even a coach.
Well, look, first of all, let's get to Antonio Brown. He's a problem. He's a problem. To do what he did this week, when your team is fighting for the playoffs, you didn't know if Baltimore was going to win or not, and you got your best player, arguably, or certainly your best receiver, I believe, just going AWOL, and then showing up after missing all those practices, showing up thinking you're going to play, to your point, that speaks about culture. Like most places, if you just decide you're not practicing.
There's no way you're playing. You're
going to show up thinking you're going to play, and then he leaves reportedly at halftime of the game.
He wanted to beat the traffic.
That's unbelievable. That you, with your team's season on the line, that you would leave. And Ryan Clark, who's on the other network, played with Antonio Brown. And in full disclosure, had his issues with Antonio Brown. But he's been saying for a while now, Antonio is about the individual stats and accolades and not about winning. And what he did this week kind of points to that. And this may also play off of the team about a week ago choosing Juju Smith-Schuster, the other receiver, as the team's MVP. Did that rub Antonio the wrong way? I don't know. But all that said, I'm with you on that. He's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the culture that enabled this. Okay, some cultures, if you do some of the stuff Antonio's done and some of the other players, you out of there. The Facebook Live and the constantly going at it with coaches on the sideline, kicking trash cans, all of that stuff. They have a culture of enablement. You know, and look, they're a family run, you know, similar to, with the Rooneys, similar to the Cincinnati Bengals. And those types of franchises where it's family owned, they tend to be very loyal, which is great. But when you're loyal, right, loyal to a fault, you're loyal, you got this family atmosphere, you tend to let things slide. But the problem is when you let things slide, when you have that atmosphere and you bring in guys that they got character issues, whether it's Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, or some of the other players, when you have players in that environment that have character issues, they're going to take advantage of it.
But I'm glad you brought up Ben Roethlisberger because he's not free of guilt as well. He's ripped on teammates, and he hasn't played that well. He's thrown some pretty bad interceptions and have hurt them.
Said it don't matter.
Right.
I'm a gunslinger.
That's what I'm saying. And so he's kind of poo-pooing when he's not playing well. So then how are you going to hold somebody else's feet to the fire if you're going to, like, pass it off when it's your turn? And the other thing is, there's a karma situation here with this team. And I said this all year to you, Chris, on the radio about the way that they treated Le'Veon Bell and how players spoke out against him, which you never hear when a guy's involved in a financial thing. Very, very rare. Usually a guy has his own fight when it comes to his money and his family and his future. People respect that and let that guy do that. And they did nothing but kind of bash him around. So I think there's a little bit of karma that comes, and that, again, comes from the culture. Why be so mad at Le'Veon Bell for trying to preserve his body and get a long-term contract, which now he, to me, is the winner in Pittsburgh.
We'll see. I mean, we'll see what type of money he gets.
But I'm saying he got out of that year where he has a chance to be a free agent. Right. They didn't make the playoffs, and I'll sit here at 10 times out of 10 and tell you if he played the whole year, they would have made the playoffs.
I could argue if James Conner was healthy, because he was playing better. His statistics were better than Le'Veon Bell.
Is he a better player than Le'Veon Bell?
Le'Veon Bell is better.
Okay.
But James Conner was doing work. And then when he got hurt, that was that was around the time when the slides
What was Le'Veon afraid of and why he didn't want to play until he got a deal?
No, that was
Because he don't want to get hurt. He doesn't want to get hurt. And when you're a running back, there's chances that you can get hurt.
The rules are horrible. I hate the franchise tag and all that they did to him. I hope he gets paid. But if he doesn't get paid, then I'm not going to call him the winner.
He's the winner because he will get paid.
We'll see if it happens. But look, there's beyond that. Under Mike Tomlin, this team appears to be scatterbrained at times. That's also a part of what we're talking about. This
You're talking
culture.
about focus?
Yeah. I mean, whether this year they had a lot of penalties, that hasn't always been the case. But even you go back to last year with against New England, where, you know, with the fake when Roethlisberger was going to kill the clock, he faked it, and he said, "I wanted to clock it." Todd Haley told me not to. I mean, you're in a critical game, critical moments against the best team in the AFC, New England, and you're having issues like that. This year, with Mike Tomlin against New Orleans, when the fake punt, I know Skip defended. I can't defend a fake punt when you're up 4 with 4 minutes left and you're in your own territory, at your own 37-yard line. Things like that. So it's the culture. It's how they finish games, how they handle themselves in clutch situations. They seem to be all over the place. Nobody really seems to be in charge. This is a culture problem. And Mike Tomlin, you know, you heard James Harrison and other people say he's a cheerleader, to use Bradshaw's words. When you see him in press conferences, he comes off as very stern. And you've heard other players talk about he's the same guy every day. It's hard if you've been the cheerleader, the player's coach, to all of a sudden become hard-nosed. But I think Tomlin has got to tighten up that culture, and maybe it needs to come from the top. But regarding Antonio Brown, if I was Tomlin, I don't know if it'll work, but you have to sit down with him. And I would make him, or strongly encourage him, to apologize to his teammates. Now, he may not do it. He seems to maybe even want out of there. But apologize to his teammates for what he did this week. If he can do that and you can explain to him, look, you're hurting yourself, you're hurting the team, this isn't a good look for you. Because even if they want to trade him, he's 31 years old.
But he's not tradable with that contract.
Okay, so as great as you are, because of your contract, because of your age, we can't even trade you. And then people look at your attitude and say, is this the guy I want? So they need to have a heart-to-heart. Mike Tomlin, Antonio Brown, and get things in order. And from the top, they need to change that culture.
The problem is we know receivers in this league, and they're known as divas for a reason. So a lot of these guys are all wired the same way, where it is all about me. And you normally are willing to put up with that, Chris, because they're that talented.
Right.
And you need them, you know? So normally that's why they kind of get like, okay, it's a little special treatment. But when a guy puts himself in a spot where he's not available for the biggest game of the year, that's when there's a problem. That's when there's a culture. That's when you got to look at the head coach for guidance to say, to be able to say, okay, we need to do something. I need to change some things here because things have gotten out of hand. But again, the league is about two things, winning and losing, and they win. So it's kind of like a mirage. They're winning, and they're always in the hunt, but they haven't won for a decade. So now you start to say to yourself, something's not right here, and something has to change if you're serious about winning championships. And that's what Pittsburgh was always about, winning championships, not just winning 9 or 10 games. And in this case, this year, they won 9 games and didn't even make the playoffs.
If they could get close to equal value, close, you're not going to get equal value. But if you can get close to that or good value for Antonio Brown, I would look at trading him. Because with Smith-Schuster now and James Washington, they like him. You know, they've got some talent where I think they could play without him, especially if you got something in return. But if you can't get it, then you have to keep him, but you got to change some things.
But I don't know what kind of team. No Le'Veon Bell, no AB, right, if you get rid of him. Roethlisberger's on the way is on the downside. So if you do that and strip those offensive pieces, I don't know what team you have. You might be handing the Browns the division.
Browns?
Ooh.
Did you just hear what I said?
You don't like Lamar Jackson, huh?
I'm just saying you might be. I don't know who's going to be the coach in Baltimore.
The division should be improving. Yeah, division improving.
Well, just to wrap up this AB conversation, is this something he can come back from in the locker room? Do you believe? If there is that sincere apology that you were talking about?
Yeah, I think if there's a sincere apology followed by change of behavior. You know, that's the only way you're going to... Look, a guy can say all he wants, spill his heart out, even cry in front of teammates. But the only way you're going to know it's real is if he changes his behavior over a certain stretch of time. So, yeah, I think he could come back from it.
And Alex, of course, because he's that good.
Yeah.
If you're not that good, you're not tolerating that, you wouldn't even be around. If he's that good and is willing to apologize and move forward, yes.
And he knows he's that good.
Yes.
But moving